Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Week 12 Stack Show. This week we got a bunch of chalky stacks I have zero interest in, and we have a lower owned stack that I have a ton of interest in. And I'll get into it after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching the Stack Show. This is week 12 of the NFL season, and I'm going to be looking through the Draftkings main slate to see if we can find any cool stacks that we can use this week or find any undervalued games or undervalued players based on matchup. I haven't looked at any DFS content this week, so I'm coming in with a fresh set of eyes where we can just focus on where the best matchups are according to the analytics and try to find cheap values or underlooked plays potentially and try to get a look at those and compare them to what current ownership's at with some of these players. We've hit big on this show a few times this year. We've hit some big plays that nobody else was talking about. And just based purely on the spreadsheet, like these guys look like good values or good matchups, and they ended up going off and they were low owned. So hopefully we'll find a few of those on this slate. Had a big week with Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving had a lot of success, especially in the Dallas versus Washington game, but also in the Jets game from yesterday. The Jets in Miami had a lot of success in that game. I put out a video talking up a few plays that did well. But in the Dallas game, I think every single one of my plays ended up hitting. And if I get 15 likes on this video, I'll put out a four pick recommendation video ahead of the main slate. And hit subscribe on the YouTube channel because putting out a lot of shows like this, a lot of game script type shows where I analyze DraftKings showdown contests and bring on some good guests to break down games with me. And take a look real quick. We'll take a look at the Jets game from this past Friday, and these are just some of the lineups that I had in there. And the strategy, I wanted to go over the strategy that I took with this particular lineup because it was one of those cool weeks that you get with Showdown where you can come up with an idea and it'll be it'll be different from the field, but it makes a lot of sense. And I'll go over my lineup real quick. I had Tyreek Hill at the captain, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson or Garrett Wilson, the Dolphins D, the Jets D, and Jeff Wilson Jr. And what I was thinking when I was building this lineup is the Jets had a backup quarterback that hasn't played, like any serious ball in a long time. And the Dolphins defense has been on fire lately ever since they got back. Jalen Ramsey has been healthy. So they've been firing on all cylinders. They got a great defensive coordinator who's Vic Fangio, whose defenses take a little bit of time to adjust to his coaching style. And once it's firing on all cylinders, like his defenses do really well. And they're at that point in this time of season and going against a inexperienced quarterback with a lot on the line. I had a feeling that it was going to be tough to plug in some of these Jets guys into a lineup without like knowing any good matchups for them or anything like that. There wasn't really any good matchups that stood out except for Tyler Conklin. And so when you think it through like that, what do we know about the Jets? What's the best player on the Jets? It's the defense. And Tua is really bad under pressure. And that Tua is going to be making some mistakes in a game like this against a defense like the Jets. So when you have no players that are standing out as far as the offense, and you got a really good defense like the Jets, like it makes a ton of sense if the one person that you put in for the opposing team was the Jets defense. I put in Garrett Wilson and the Jets defense, and I didn't want to put in two Jets guys, and I said that in my video of shorts yesterday when I put it out there. I didn't want to put in two Jets, but I liked Garrett Wilson, and I felt like I needed to put in someone besides the Jets. But it turns out I didn't, because if I had only swapped out Garrett Wilson with Jalen Waddle, like this lineup would have come in first place. Because you can see we'll look at the Black Friday main contest. If you look at this main contest, you see where I'm at in it. I finished in, I can't remember what place. I finished in 464th place. If you go to the first place lineup, now look at this lineup. You got Tyreek and the captain, Mostert and Wilson. That was getting a little bit different, putting both running backs in there, but the running backs had the best matchup on the Dolphins. I didn't want to put Tua in there because I knew Tua was going to be under a lot of pressure, and it was going to be tough for him to make value. And that is why I kept Waddle out, because I didn't want to put two receivers in there. But it turns out, if you look at the winning lineup, I also had both defenses in there too. Was a way to get different too. But the Jets made the most sense out of anyone on the Jets to plug in as your one Jet. I just made the mistake of putting two in there. But look at the winning lineup. Jalen Waddle. The only difference was plugging in Jalen Waddle. And this is why when I do these showdown shows, I preach to, have your core. Like this was my core. I had Tyreek in every lineup. I really liked both running backs, starting both running backs in a lineup. I really liked both defenses. I built the lineup late, so I didn't have a lot of time to build a bunch of variations of it. And I was on the road. You can see in my video. I was out. It was a Black Friday record store day sale yesterday, and I have to do a lot of reselling. So I was out looking for these records that I can buy cheap and sell them for like 2-3 times what they're worth. But if I'd have spent more time focused on building these lineups, this would have been my core, because this is what I liked, and I could have potentially swapped out Garrett for Jalen Waddle. So like that's what I mean when I say rotate guys into your lineup. Like find the core that you like with these showdown lineups, and then just rotate guys in. Like maybe you do a 4 core guys and you're rotating in 2 guys or something like that. But in this particular one, I really liked every play except for Garrett Wilson, and I could have easily swapped him out for Jalen Waddle, and I would have won like 28K in this case, but I would have come in first place. So that's just a little bit of a like thing that I wanted to share with you guys, because it's something that I've been talking about on the game script shows a lot recently, and it was a perfect example of it. But now let's dig into the main slate. Make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. Going to have a few games in this slate that I really like, so you're going to want to see those. And I'll have a short video tomorrow or sometime tonight. Just get me to 15 likes and I'll get there. I'm at 190 YouTube subs too. So get me over, help me get over 200 there. Definitely appreciate that. Sort of set a goal at the beginning of the season to maybe get like 250, and I'm already at 200. So I'm happy with that. So I have 190. I just need to get 10 more to get to 200. So help me out there. If we're looking at the slate, the game that stands out the most is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Buffalo Bills. That's going to be a good one. Let's see what Josh Allen's ownership is currently. If we're looking at the highest owned guys, people are gravitating towards Trevor Lawrence and Gardner Minshew. This is my first time looking at ownership, so I'm kind of surprised to see Gardner Minshew. I'm going to have to wait till I get to that game to find out why he is so highly owned. Baker Mayfield. Okay, so It's a matchup between the Colts and the Bucks that everybody seems to like. I like Jalen Hurts down here at 8% owned, and I like Josh Allen even more, and he's only 4%. So this is one of those rare weeks where we're going to be able to get a game like this potentially under owned. Let's see where the wide receivers are. Wide receivers, we're looking at Tank Dell as the highest owned guy. I don't see the first Eagle or Bills guy until A.J. Brown, and he's at 13%. I don't know how this game is the highest projected game on the slate, and you got A.J. Brown at 13%, and you got Stephon Diggs at 11%, and a guy that I like is Khalil Shakir, and I am seeing him at – got to scroll way down to get to him. So let me see what his ownership is. Khalil Shakir is 5% owned. So yeah, this is going to be, unless the ownership starts to take off a little bit, this is going to be the game for me this week. Jalen Hurts, like I said, I like him. I like Josh Allen. This is going to be a good game to stack. So long story short, so that's the game that I like the most. I do like that Jacksonville Houston game. Looking at it now, we're looking at a 47.5 point total there with a very tight spread, 1.5 points with Jacksonville as the favorites. That will be an interesting game. And we've seen CJ Stroud and everything that he's been able to accomplish this year. But if people are on that division game, that'll be great for us because they've already played each other once this season. It could be a defensive game this week. That could easily be a defensive game this week. And that puts us in a great spot if we're stacking the Philly-Buffalo game. I also like the Rams matchup versus the Cardinals. The Rams look really good. They look really set up as far as matchups. And on the Arizona side, it looks pretty good too for quarterback and tight end. That's perfect for Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. For Indy versus Tampa Bay, I'm not really sure what people are liking so much in that one, but it's like a game where the Colts probably have the better side of that matchup. It's a 43.5 point total, at least it was earlier this week, and we're looking at a 2.5 point spread. So people are expecting that one to be a tight game, maybe with some back and forth in it. So interesting there. Kansas City versus the Raiders. I don't like that game. It's a 9.5 spread with Kansas City as the favorites, and I just don't like the matchup against the Vegas pass defense, and I don't like Vegas's matchup against Kansas City's defense at all. And then Patrick Mahomes has no weapons on top of it except for Travis Kelce. And Vegas has been pretty good against tight ends, but Kelce can beat a matchup like that, but I'm still not interested in that game. New Orleans versus Atlanta. There's some spots in there that are pretty interesting. New Orleans slot receiver, Shaheed. It might be a Shaheed week this week. So we'll see what his value is today. Atlanta, they got a good matchup for their tight ends. That's good for Jonnu and Kyle Pitts, but maybe more so for Jonnu, who seems to be the guy that's getting all the passing work for their tight ends. We'll take a look at that when we get there. New Orleans Saints, their tight end has a good matchup too, but we're not interested there. Carolina versus Tennessee. Derrick Henry has a really good matchup this week. So Derrick Henry is going to be a guy that we can consider this week if we have the salary. Let's see. Cleveland versus Denver. Cleveland has all sorts of good matchup stuff going on there with the quarterback and the running back and the tight end. But as we've talked about many times with Denver lately, Denver's defense, you got to consider them for only since week 5 or so, because they are a completely different team now. And a lot of these stats that might pop on a spreadsheet don't really take that into consideration. So looks like a defensive battle between Cleveland and Denver, and probably a game to avoid unless you want to play the defense. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. Pittsburgh has all sorts of good matchup in this game, and Cincinnati's got a good matchup in the slot, but they're dealing with a new quarterback. Joe Burrow is out, so probably want to limit exposure to this game. But we've seen them, putting Jamar Chase in the slot a lot this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they give him some slot work against Pittsburgh this week. But he's expensive, and there's a lot better options for that price. New England at the Giants. The Patriots have some good matchup situations, and the Giants have a good matchup situation for the wideouts. The problem is they don't have anyone decent throwing to the wideouts. We saw Tommy DeVito last week. He put up a good game against the Commanders, and he actually looked pretty good. And that was a game that we stacked on this show, and it ended up doing really well. It did really well last week. So hopefully we can find another situation like that this week. But I don't like the Patriots Giants this week, except for maybe like a handful of guys. So let's dig into these player pool here. We'll start off with the Saints and the Falcons. Looking at the quarterback position, Jameis Winston. What's Carr's situation? Is Carr in? Yeah, he's removed from the injury report, so it's going to be Carr this week. And going back to that matchup, let's see. Yeah, Carr's got a good matchup against Atlanta. He's got a good matchup with especially Raheed Shaheed. And Raheed Shaheed is back down a little bit, priced to 4,300 because he hasn't done anything in a couple weeks. And these are the spots where we love Rashid Shaheed. Let's see, has he played Atlanta yet this year? No, this is the first match against Atlanta. Raheed Shaheed is in play. I'm gonna put together my player pool here as I'm going through this, so I don't forget anybody when I'm building my lineups. So let me go into Atlanta versus New Orleans, and I'm going to plug Raheed Shaheed into my player pool this week. As far as other matchup advantages, it looks like, let's see, Saints have Michael Thomas with a good matchup, and Chris Olave. They both have good matchups. So I mean, it might be a Saints type of stack week because we saw Derek Carr. He did pretty well. The last game that he played before he went out with a concussion. Let's look at his game log here. Yeah, he went out. He went out after only scoring 5.5 points. The little stretch that he went on there was week 6, 7, and 8 versus Houston, Jacksonville, and Indy. And he did 20 plus DraftKings points in each of those games. He's at a 5,800 salary now, though. So maybe not so much interested in Carr as I am in his weapons. And we got Chris Olave at 6,600, and Michael Thomas is on IR, unfortunately. So that makes me like Shaheed even more. Like, I think it's definitely a Shaheed week. So yeah, I'm going to put him in the lineup right now. We'll just get him in here now. Other than that, like I mentioned, I like the tight ends. So if you're doing a skinny stack, I'm running it back with either Kyle Pitts or Jonnu Smith, probably Jonnu Smith, just because he's a lot cheaper. Jonnu Smith had nothing last week, but the week before that, he scored 24 points. And then he had a couple weeks where he didn't do anything. But he's been up and down this year. But Jonnu has been pretty good. Kyle Pitts, let's see how that corresponds with his. Yeah, Kyle Pitts just has not done anything all year. So yeah, Jonnu Smith is a guy that I would consider in lineups this week. I'm not going to plug him in now, though. So Jonnu Smith, Chris Olave, and Raheed Shaheed. I got interested in all those guys from this game. And again, we're looking at a total in that game of 42.5, which isn't horrible compared to some of these other games. So don't hate that. All right, let's go on to Pittsburgh at Cincy. let's see. I'm just going to plug Olave, make sure I'm getting him in, and I'm going to make sure that I'm getting Jonnu Smith in my player pool this week. So Pittsburgh Cincy is another interesting matchup. Division rivals. They're both vying for a playoff spot. Um, Pittsburgh finally fired Matt Canada. They finally got rid of Matt Canada. So we've seen this with even the Bills just as recently as last week, I think it was. The team comes out and they rally in this types of situations. If they have any sense that Tomlin might be in danger of getting fired at the end of the year, maybe they kind of rally around Tomlin. He's a player's coach. Players like him, and Tomlin is he's super consistent. And they're playing on the road in Pittsburgh. Looks like we got some rain issues. We'll check the Roto Grinders weather situation real quick with that game. Weather edge. Let's see. Look at the Pittsburgh game. And give you guys an idea of what the weather forecast is. Let's see. Pittsburgh. All right, we're looking at a 39% chance of rain. As we get later into the afternoon, we're looking at a 60, 70, 90% chance between 1 and 3 p.m. So, not going to be the ideal situation for this team, except for the running backs. And I like Jaylen Warren in that situation. He's at 5,400. And Jaylen Warren, let's see what kind of ownership that we're looking at for Jaylen Warren this week. Let's see. Jaylen Warren, he's only at 4%. I think there's been some talk among the beat writers of getting Warren more involved now that they've made that switch from Matt Canada. So I'm going to put Warren in my player pool this week. Let's see what his matchup is. It doesn't have the, let's see, Pittsburgh. Yeah, he's got a pretty good matchup. Cincinnati's giving up 22 points, DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So that's pretty middling, but in a situation where, maybe they want to give him more work and he's got a rainy situation going on, that makes him more interesting. And Deontay Johnson probably has one of the better matchups in this matchup. The wideouts are getting 17.1 DraftKings points a game against Cincinnati's defense. So, yeah, that puts Pickens and Deontay Johnson in play. But Deontay Johnson has the better DVOA matchup between those two guys. So I kind of have a lean towards Deontay Johnson if I'm going to use one of those guys. And I don't hate Pickens either. Let's see what Pickens' ownership is. Or Pickens' salary is only $4,700. And he hasn't done anything in a while. Pickens, Pickens you might want to put on your radar this week. New offensive coordinator might be beneficial there. Deontay Johnson, man, 4,900. Like, Deontay Johnson had a couple slow weeks, but, when he came back in week 7, he had 3 double-digit DraftKings points games in a row. Then he faced 2 tough pass defenses in Green Bay and Cleveland. And now he gets a friendlier matchup against Cincinnati. And Cincinnati is giving up enough points to the position to make him interesting. So, yeah, definitely keep Deontay in your player pool this week. And as far as tight ends, looks like Pat Freiermuth is back. He came back, let's see, last week in week 11 he was back. He ended up only getting 1 target last week, but I like to see that he came back last week and he's not just coming off the injured reserve this week. So, yeah, Pat Freiermuth is interesting this week. I am going to leave him in my player pool. just to have him in there. And I'm going to leave Deontay in my player pool as well. Pickens, I'm kind of on the fence with. I've been a Pickens fan all season, but I just don't know the situation there with the new offensive coordinator. I want to see what happens first. But other than that, not really anyone I'm interested in this game. I think Higgins is out. Yep, Higgins is out this week. That makes Chase interesting, but like I said, at 8,300, he's a little bit pricey. You see what he can do without Joe Burrow in the lineup, as he did 9.2 DraftKings points in last week. When Joe Burrow was hurt, 9 DraftKings points, 8 DraftKings points. These monster weeks were with Joe Burrow. And, I just don't, I just think that I like that Philly game better. So I'm gonna focus more on that game this week. Let's see, Jacksonville, Houston. This is one of those ones I was talking about. This is going to be a popular one this week, and for good reason. Jacksonville, they got some good matchups. I think I like Evan Ingram the best, and that could be a good pivot. Like if you don't want to stack this game, because Evan Ingram, I believe, is going to probably have low ownership this week. Take a look real quick. Yeah, looking at 14% ownership, so he's got significant ownership. But I do like him this week. I'm going to put him in my player pool just because he's got such a good matchup. The other good matchup in this game is the wideouts for Houston, and in particular, let's see. Probably Tank Dell is the guy that I would lean in this matchup. Tank Dell's also going to be the highest owned guy on the slate, or one of the higher owned guys, for good reason. 30 DraftKings points in 2 of the last 3. But you know what? Like I'm looking at this DVOA matchup for Tank Dell this week, and he's got the worst of the matchups. For 39% of his routes are run in the right side of the field. And Jacksonville is really good versus the right side of the field. They're one of the best teams in the league, second best team or third best team in the league, pretty much, against that position. So Tank Dell really does not have a good matchup. Noah Brown has a middling matchup, but Jacksonville's only given up 15 points a game to the slot. Robert Woods would be, I guess, the other guy. Or Nico Collins. Yeah, Nico Collins is the other guy. Nico Collins, I'd probably have the most interest in this week. He's at 6,400. So, yeah, I don't mind pivoting off of Tank Dell and going to Nico Collins. What's Nico's ownership relative to Tank Dell? They're both high. They're both like at 20+%. I might just fade completely with those wide receivers and just hope that game does not do well, because their prices are up, their ownership is up, and it's division rivals playing against each other, and it doesn't really have a recipe. Like CJ Stroud has been on a roll this season, and he's got a lot of hype, and for good reason. But these are the type of hyped up spots where you can fade a team when they're running into a situation like this. Houston at home, so they got the advantage there. But yeah, I think I'm going to pass on most of this game, except for maybe Nico Collins, and the running backs don't really have a good matchup. Oh yeah, Evans. Evans is the other guy that I would be interested in. So I'm putting both those guys in my player pool for this week, and leave Tank Dell in your player pool. But if you need a pivot off of him, like don't hesitate, because he's going to be way too chalky. All right, so Tampa Bay versus Indy. This is another game that's going to be popular. My spreadsheet. I lop out the first 2 weeks of the season. So, I'm looking at my spreadsheet matchups. Seems like the Indy stacks are in the better spot, but it's like the quarterback with the slot receiver and the tight end. Josh Downs is a guy that I've liked all season. Josh Downs, I think he was hurt last week, but he ended up having like a big play in, what was it, week 10? Yeah, he didn't even play last week. So yeah, the Josh Downs situation, like I like him in this matchup. He's got a good point allowance type of matchup. And scrolling through here, like you can see why. Like he's had a solid year this year. 14 points against New Orleans, 26 points against Cleveland, 13 against Jacksonville, 15 against Tennessee. He's 4,800. So Josh Downs is a guy I think it's pretty easy to add him to the player pool. So let's see. Josh Downs, I'm going to add him in. Let's see. Michael Pittman. What's his situation? Pittman, he has an okay type of matchup according to DVOA, but Pittman, I don't know why people like this game so much. I just don't get it. I don't see it like in this game. So I'm probably not going to put a whole bunch of anybody in this game. The running backs for Tampa Bay have a really good matchup. Tampa Bay, Indy is allowing 27.5 points, DraftKings points a game to running back. But we saw Rachaad White is on the injury report, and he's questionable for Sunday's game with a knee injury. So this is something that happened in practice because he wasn't on the injury report earlier in the week. But he's got the best matchup, and that if that injury scares people off of him, he's at 6,100, so he's affordable, and he'd be a good way to differentiate yourself from the field by plugging in Rachaad White. Let's see what his ownership is at. 20% owned. Jesus. All right. So I don't know. I don't see it with this game. I think it's easy to pivot off of this game. But I do like Rachaad White's matchup. I don't like his ownership. Other guys that I like, Indy's tight end, if they had a tight end that they were consistently throwing to, Cade Otton's got a good matchup. What's Cade Otton's ownership? Let's see. Cade Otton is 5% owned. There you go. There's your pivot. Cade Otton. I'm adding him into my player pool because he's basically got the best matchup on Indy's side, pretty much. Him and the slot receiver Downs have good matchups. If I was going to stack that game, I'd probably go Minshew, Downs, and Otton. Honestly, those guys are going to have the best matchups, and there would be a cheap stack. On the Tampa side, I'd run it back with either. I'd run it back with Otton. So I'd go Minshew to Downs and run it back with maybe Otton or White. So I mean, but I don't even want to play Minshew, so I wouldn't even do that. So those are a few players that are interesting in this game. Let me plug in, get them in my player pool there. All right. So the next game is New York and New England, the Giants versus the Patriots. And this matchup is another one of those ones where we'd be dumpster diving pretty much. It's the lowest point total on the slate. At least last when I got these numbers, it was 33.5, with the Giants as 3.5 point dogs. Let's see. They are playing in New York, so we got the home point dogs. Who's the quarterback? It looks like it's going to be DeVito because Taylor and Jones are still on IR. DeVito did pretty good last week. He put up 22 points for us versus Washington. So I don't hate. I'm not going to play DeVito, but let's take a look at some of these weapons this week. Wide receiver on the Giants side has a good matchup, in particular, Wan'Dale Robinson. And Wan'Dale, what has he done recently? Wan'Dale, 4 targets last week, 3 targets the week before that, and 5 targets the week before that. Hasn't really developed the chemistry with DeVito yet. But Robinson has a good matchup with New England. Let's see. He's got a good DVOA matchup. Probably the best DVOA matchup for slot receivers, apart from having to face the Chargers. So, yeah, Wan'Dale is interesting this week, but from a points allowed perspective, the Patriots are only allowing 16 points a game to the slot, so maybe not too high on him, but I do like Wan'Dale with that DVOA matchup. Darius Slayton has a much tougher DVOA matchup, but wideouts are getting 20.7 points a game from the Patriots defense. So, that puts him at least, let's see, who would it be? I think Slayton is the guy that's been getting most of the work, but he's doubtful. So if he's doubtful, it might make Hodgins interesting. But I don't want any of these Giants. I don't even want to go over them so much. It's the Wan'Dale Robinson would probably be the only guy I'd be interested in. I think that the Patriots would be able to slow down Barkley enough, and Barkley's going to be too expensive, like considering all the other options that I like this week. So probably skipping it from the New York side. From the Patriots side, best matchup is for the wideouts and the slot, but they don't really have any wideouts. This guy, Demario Douglas, could be interesting this week. He's 4,400. He's had a couple, 3 out of the last 4 weeks, he scored over 10 DraftKings points. He's getting a ton of targets, 9 targets last week, 7 targets and 7 targets. Last we saw Mac Jones, he was getting benched for Bailey Zappi. Jones is standing on the depth chart, remains unclear heading into Sunday's game. This is just being one of these stupid Patriots situations, like with the old school coaches just benching their guy for, it's just stupidity. Like they benched him in the last drive of the game. Who were they playing that week? They played the Colts. They benched the dude the last drive of the game where they just needed a score I can't remember if it was going to be a score to tie it or a score to win the game, but they freaking benched him in the last drive of the game. They put Bailey Zappi in there, and Bailey Zappi throws an interception to end the game. It's just so stupid, so it's hard to trust any of these guys. But Demario Douglas is the guy that I would like on the Patriots side, if anybody. He might be, let's see. Yeah, he might be my favorite play on this game. He's got a good DVOA matchup, and he's got a good points allowed matchup. So Douglas is a guy that only guy I'd probably go to here with leaving in my player pool. He's gotten enough work recently that you can use a guy like him. And Demario Douglas, he's got 18% ownership, so that takes me right off of him. So yeah, he's got a good matchup. There's a reason why he's 18% owned. He's cheap. He's going to get theoretically a lot of work, but you never know with the Patriots. I would leave him in your player pool and maybe adjust his points down so you don't get overexposed to him. But he's interesting. Next up, we got let's see, Carolina versus Tennessee. This is probably a game to fade for the most part, except for Derrick Henry, who has a really good matchup, and he is pretty cheap at 6,400, and he hasn't done anything the last 2 weeks. But prior to that, he had 3 weeks in a row with almost scoring 20 DraftKings points. And yeah, Derrick Henry is in play, firmly in play this week. So plug him into your player pool. Let's see. I'm going to get Wandale in my player pool real quick. Probably end up taking him out, but I just like to get a little fat with my player pool in the beginning. Derrick Henry I like. And on the Carolina side, let's see. Carolina, I don't like really anybody on the Carolina side. There's no one really stands out as far as the matchup. Thielen, he's at 7,300 now. You know, the guy's been on fire all season, but 15 DraftKings points, 10 DraftKings points. He hasn't scored over 15 DraftKings points really since week 6, but that doesn't mean that he can't score over in this matchup. But I don't like the DVOA or the points allowed for Thielen this week. They're all sort of middling, so I'm not really going to lean towards Thielen at all. But Derrick Henry is definitely on the player pool. All right. Next up, we take a look at the let's see. Going to take a look at the Rams and the Cardinals. Now, this game was standing out on my spreadsheet. It is a 44.5 point total with that 1.5 point spread. Let's see what the ownership's like on these guys. Go to that game. Looking at Kyler Murray with 10% ownership and Matthew Stafford with 3.5% ownership. Wideouts, everyone's under 10% there. That's good. Looks like Cooper Kupp's going to be back this week. Trey McBride is at 20%, which sucks because I'd love to play him, but 20% tight end is a tough pill to swallow. But we'll see. I'm going to add him to the player pool regardless. We can see the chemistry that he has had with Kyler Murray since returning. Last week, he got 7 targets, and the week before that, he got 9 targets. But, throughout the season, he was mediocre in the beginning, and then he got 14 targets against Baltimore, and then it just kind of was lift off from there. So I would anticipate him getting 7 or 8 targets in this game, especially with Marquise Brown being banged up. And Trey McBride, the Rams are giving up about 15 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. Now, Rondale Moore has a really good matchup. Rondale Moore has a good matchup with the Rams giving up 19 points a game to the slot. Rondale Moore was a guy I liked. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before. But I like him again this week. It's 3,600, still too cheap. Last week he only got 1 target. I think he scored. Yeah, he scored a touch. He got a 48-yard touchdown. They didn't throw to him again all the whole game. So I don't know. Maybe it's something with Kyler because last year he was up and down. He's been up and down with Kyler throughout his career, and he's just been up and down in general. Let's see what Marquise Brown's situation is. He got 5 targets and 4 targets so far from Kyler. Didn't practice Friday. Listed as questionable against the Rams. Looks like it was a precautionary thing. But if he's out, that would leave Dortch at 3,300. And Dortch got 8 targets last week. So I don't know who he was coming in for last week. Maybe he came in for Rondale. He got 8 targets last week, though. I like Dortch. I like keeping him in your player pool this week at 3,300 because especially if Marquise Brown is going to be limited, that's going to make Dortch interesting, and I like getting him in my player pool. So I'm going to add him. Who else has good matchups here? The Rams, slot receiver and wideouts and running back all have good matchups. Everyone except for the quarterback and the tight end position look like they're in good shape. If you're looking at this from a stack perspective, I think the easiest stack to go with is a Kyler to McBride. You don't really have to, maybe Dortch, add Dortch in there, and then run it back with, like maybe Puka Nacua. What's Puka Nacua's ownership? He's only at 9%, so Nacua is in play. Cooper Kupp is in play. For running back, Kyren Williams is back this week, but he's coming off of IR, I think. Let me just confirm that. Williams was activated off IR on Saturday. It's good to go for Sunday's matchup. He was trending in this direction. Let's see. I don't know. I'm assuming he's going to be somewhat healthy. Let's see. Did he come back last week? No. I would be cautious about Kyren, even though he's got a great matchup. Maybe they continue to use Puka and Cooper as an extension of the run game, and that would turn me away from Kyren a little bit. But he's got a really good matchup because Arizona is giving up 28 DraftKings points a game to the running back, and that is that is among the bottom 5 of the league. So Kyren Williams has a really good matchup if you can stomach that injury risk. He's only at 3% owned. So yeah, Kyren Williams is firmly in play. Get him in your player pool at that ownership discount and that matchup. So yeah, just a few guys in there that are interesting for adding into your player pool. See what else we got here from a matchup perspective. Running back, wide receiver, and slot. So we got Puka, we got Cooper Kupp. I like Puka's DVOA matchup the best. Cooper Kupp, let's see what his latest injury news was. He was hurt last week, so we didn't see him last week. Let's see. Oh, we did see him last week. He scored two points last week. Is week 10 that we didn't see him, but I think he re-aggravated something in that game last week. Something took him out of that Seattle game because he only had one target. But he does not have an injury designation this week, which is huge. So Cooper Kupp at 8K, you could do worse than that. Nacua is at 7,600. So both those guys are worth adding into a player pool. Let's go on to the next game. And I'm really not seeing a game that I want to stack yet. Maybe it's because I got my mind on that Buffalo Eagles game, but I'm looking for a game that's going to take me off of that game, and I'm just not seeing it. So Cleveland, Denver, this is going to be a defensive slog. It's really nothing that I like in this game at all. I don't like the quarterback situation for Cleveland. I don't like the running back might be the only good spot on Cleveland. Let's find out where. I'm going to do a filter on my projections here to see. I'm going to take out the first 4 weeks of the season. I'm going to run it with DraftKings, doing a per game. Let's apply that filter. I'm going to see where Denver has been, their defense has been versus running backs for the past few weeks. Okay, so they're still 9th in points allowed to the running back position once you lop out that Miami game that they gave up, 8 touchdowns or whatever it was to those Miami running backs. Denver is in a good spot. Not Denver. Cleveland's running backs are in a good spot this week. So let's see where their ownership is. Ownership on Jerome Ford is 2.5%, and Kareem Hunt is 1.47%. Let's see how the receiving backs do out of that backfield. As far as receiving yards, Denver's a little bit better against receiving backs, only allowing 36 yards a game. How many receptions? They're allowing the sixth most receptions, though. So keep that in mind with your Denver guys this week. Let's see. Let's take a look at them up close. Keep that in mind with your Browns guys. I'm sorry, Denver's allowing the sixth most. So let's take a look at Ford. 12 attempts last week, 17 the week before that. Had a tough matchup against Baltimore where he put up 107 rushing yards. Did not cap it off with a touchdown, though. So his point total was only 114.9 points. Versus Pittsburgh, they've got Cam Hayward back, so that run defense is a little bit better than it was earlier in the year. He only got 12 attempts in that game, though, and scored 12 Draftkings points, but he did have 5 targets in that game. So what did Hunt do? Hunt did not do really anything the past 2 weeks. Hunt hasn't done anything since that stretch of games from weeks 6 through 8. So Hunt, 12 attempts, 10 attempts, and 14 attempts. Is that more than Ford's gotten the past 3 weeks? Ford has gotten 12, 17, and 20. No, it hasn't been more. So they're both getting an even workload. So you could go either way with Ford and Hunt. I might lean towards Ford. What's his news? Ford is expected to have a significant role in Week 12 against the Broncos. Zach Jackson of the Athletic reports. Week 12 game plan shouldn't change much from last week. Ride the combination of Ford and Hunt. I think with the volume that they're getting, the defenses are going to adjust for that, though. But the opportunity is going to be there. So I would keep both Ford and Hunt in lineups this week. They both got good matchups. On the Denver side, Cleveland's just solid around the board, and Cleveland has been playing lights out ever since Watson went out. You can see it in their. Let's see. They allowed 31 points to Baltimore. I think that's the week that Watson went out. And then last week, they kept it really tight against Pittsburgh, 13-10. I wouldn't be surprised if we see under 40 points in this game. What's the total? Cleveland, Denver is a 35.5 point total. Yeah. So those running backs on the Cleveland side is all I'd pretty much be interested in there. And David Njoku has a good matchup. Let's see what they've done since week 5 with tight ends. Denver is allowing the third most points per game to tight ends. So Njoku is in play too. So keep Njoku in your player pool this week. Just sucks he's got a rookie quarterback thrown to him, but Njoku is worthy of keeping in the lineups or player pool this week. So let's see. Moving on to Kansas City, Las Vegas. Really have no interest in this game for a bunch of priced up players who are in a bad matchup on both sides. And if we're looking at the spreadsheet, I'm seeing a 43.5 point total, 9.5 points towards Kansas City as favorites. Really don't see anything I like there. Pacheco maybe would be the only guy of interest in this game, but it's an easy fade, I think, on this game. Maybe Jacoby Myers, but I don't even want to start any of those guys. That's an easy cross-off game. Let's see. So last game is the game of the week. Philadelphia playing at home against Buffalo. They also got rain concerns in this one. Let's see what the exact report is. It's looking like it's going to start raining at 7 p.m. Tomorrow in Philly. So 25% chance throughout the day, and then once you hit 7 p.m., it's a 80% chance, but the game will be over by then, I believe. It starts at 3:25, so it should be good. How to attack this game, though? So let's see. There's so many good matchups in this game, too, which is what I like about it. I think I would approach it with Josh Allen. I'm plugging in Allen. I'm not going to get cute. I'm going to plug in Diggs, and I'm going to plug in Khalil Shakir. Those are the guys that I've liked lately. And we know that Philly is weak against slot receivers. They are allowing 25 points a game to the slot, almost 26, which is the worst in the league. So Shakir has about as good a matchup as you can ask for. Same with Diggs. Diggs has a really good matchup. Eagles are giving up 20.4 points a game, which is, like bottom 5. So Diggs, Shakir, and Allen seems like a completely natural stack there. Let's see. I'm going to take a look at some of these game logs from this year. I want to see what Philly's been doing to tight ends. All right. Philly allowed 16 points to Hunter Henry, 26 points to TJ Hawkinson. You scroll down a little bit more. You have to scroll down quite a bit to get to the next one that they've allowed points to. 16 points to Logan Thomas, 22 points to Jake Ferguson. Weeks 10 and 11. I don't have weeks 10 and 11, but they've allowed enough big weeks to tight ends to keep Kincaid in the player pool. You can, mix and match those 3 guys, I think. Actually, I probably would mix and match Diggs with either or of those guys for a double stack. So I'm going to keep Kincaid in my player pool. He's at 13% ownership. Looks like the go-to guy for the field as far as ownership goes, because we're seeing 13% on Brown. I'm going to keep that there. I'm going to plug Stephon Diggs in with 11% ownership. Devontae Smith only 10% ownership, and Khalil Shakir only 5% ownership. And I'll put in Gabe Davis for good measure, 3% ownership. And let's get Julio in there while we're at it, just so we have enough of these guys to mess around with. Now, the Gabe Davis situation, like on the last Showdown show, I pointed this out. Look at his home road splits. At home, 0 points versus the Jets, understandable. 9.6 points against Denver. 23.7 points against Tampa Bay. Had a dud against the Giants, but then had 25 points against Jacksonville, 15 points against Miami. All these are home games. 21 points against Las Vegas. Listen to his road games. 0 points against Cincy. 1.6 points against New England. 10 points against Washington. And 5.2 points against the Jets. So he failed to draw a target last week against the Jets at home. And I wonder if that's something to do with the new coordinator. Let's see what Shakir did last week. If we go to Shaquille, Khalil Shakir. We're looking at, look at that, 23 DraftKings points last week. He had 4 targets against the Jets, but Shakir is coming on, and I've been waiting for that for a while. But I think he's becoming a go-to target. What did Kincaid do last week? Kincaid had 7 targets last week. He's basically the number 2. Just super solid. Look at that, double-digit DraftKings points since week 7. So he's been pretty consistent. Kincaid's a guy you definitely want to keep in your player pool. I'm going to take out, well, I'm going to leave Gabe Davis in there, but I'm going to project him down because I don't want to get stuck with too many shares of him. You never want to really take a guy out when you're stacking the team, because then you'll just be kicking yourself if that's the guy that goes off. For a run back, now we talked about this with Buffalo on these showdown shows. I like DeAndre Swift because these running backs do well after contact versus Buffalo. But if they, if they can't get past that first contact, these running backs, they don't do anything. But if they can, then they end up having explosive plays. We also got Milano missing in that secondary for the Bills, and then on top of that, you got Tre'Davious White out as well. But from a running back perspective, missing Matt Milano is huge. But what also is huge is missing the Dallas Goedert, because he's got no check down guy except for Swift, really. And then on top of that, there was a offensive lineman. I can't remember his name, but he'd been hurt for a while, which is what was slowing Swift down for most of the season. But he came back last week, and look at that magic. Swift is back up to 20 DraftKings points. So in this matchup, I'm plugging in Swift. I think he's going to be, they're going to be blocking well for him. And I just like that situation. So defense, I think I got my stack that I'm looking for. I want to put in Smith to, let's get Smith in there. That's going to leave me with 3,700 a guy. All right, so I'm going to get all these guys back in my player pool, and we can look to round this out. If I'm looking at defense, I'm going to go cheap, and the cheapest one I see is the Chiefs D. They have a good matchup against the Vegas Raiders. So at 3,100, I'm going to plug them in for now. That's going to leave me at 4,100 per spot. For running back, let's see who else we want to plug in. I'm going to have to go cheap. See if we can find the cheapest guys that are interesting. Stevenson is interesting against the Giants. Let's see what the Giants are giving up 23.5 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So we keep him in mind. Javonte Williams is only 5,700. That's pretty cheap. Jalen Warren's only 5,400. Kareem Hunt, 4,800. So we're getting closer. And other than that, I'm trying to see if I see any cheap guys I like. If you guys see something that I'm missing, maybe I'm not thinking of a guy who's injured or something, and one of these cheap guys is worth putting in, then just plug them in. So if I wanted to go, let's go with tight end. Let's get a cheap tight end in there real quick and see what that leaves us with. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Okay, if Dortch is in for Marquise Brown this week. I like Dortch a lot at 3,300. If Brown is in, then I probably lean more towards Shaheed in that 1v1. But as far as tight end, let's pick a tight end real quick here. I want to go cheap. Jonnu is the cheapest so far. Kate Otten has got a really good matchup. Let's plug in Otten. 6K for my last running back spot. It gives some options. We got Ford, who I talked about. We got Jalen Warren, who I talked about. Plenty of options. If we went back to Shaheed, we're at 5K for that final running back spot. And that leaves us with Hunt. It gives us Hunt as an option. And I think Hunt has just as likely, he gets just as many touches, and he's just as likely to get as many touches as Jerome Ford this week. And he's much cheaper, and he's much lower owned. So yeah, that's an interesting way to go this week. If I wanted to go a little bit cheaper, I like Swift a lot. I like Smith a lot. So I want to keep those guys in there. I want to keep Diggs in there. But if I have to go a different route, like Shaheed for Dortch playing would be perfect for this lineup because you got plenty of running back options at the end there. But if it ends up being Dortch not subbing in, then I like Shaheed. And let's take Diggs and let's take Otten out. Let's put Kincaid in there as his second guy. I don't like Shakir and Kincaid in the same lineup because they're kind of redundant. You know what? Okay, let me put Otten back in. Let's put in Davis. Put in Davis leaves you with 8K for the running back position. That leaves you in Kamara territory. A few options there. I'm not really high on Barkley too much. ETN I'm not high on in that matchup. I don't really like much of anything. So, I mean, I really don't mind being kind of hamstrung on salary there because we can find a way to, just swapping out Shaheed for Dortch. If Dortch plays, is going to give us a ton of options in a lineup like this. So keep that in mind. If we wanted to try a different game, I really don't like any other games to stack this week. So I think that's the way that I'm going to go. Maybe we try that Kyler stack. I'm going to put in Kyler Murray. Who's more expensive this week. Let's see if we can find a cheap guy. I'm starting to see why, maybe people are looking at that Mayfield situation. Ooh. Levis at home was a spot that I was looking for, but I don't like it against this defense. Carolina's pass defense is too good. Yeah, I don't like him in that matchup. But if I wanted to, let's try something different here. Let's put in. Let's go back to that. What happens if we plug in Derrick Henry here? Let's see. We got that. We got Diggs, Shakir. Let's say Dortch, Otten. D in there. Chiefs. I mean, that leaves us with. How does that leave us with? Oh, I had Smith in there before. Smith. I mean, that leaves us with Olave and guys like that. If you wanted to take Swift out and put Smith in at 6,400 for the running back spot, that puts us in territory of Mixon, Pacheco. Don't like any of these guys. I like Ford. Like Ford's the best guy. Like I like. So I really think that way to go is the better way to go. Let's put Ford in there. And let's take. Now I'm gonna put Swift back in there. $400 is what you need to find, so you might as well just swap out the defense at that point. Maybe Texans D versus Jacksonville. We've seen Trevor Lawrence make some mistakes. That give us different than the field who's going to be stacking that game. So gives some options there, but that's the way I like to go. That game is the game of the week for me. I just don't think that there's a reason to. But all right, guys, hit that like button. Look for 15. I'll take a deeper dive into this throughout the night, and I'll be able to put up a short video. Get me 15 likes. Hit subscribe on the page. Get me to 200 subscribers, and I definitely appreciate that. And make sure to watch tomorrow for the game script episode. Been on fire with them. Like two out of the last four, I think, have been like spot on. Missed on the the San Francisco game. I missed on that, and I missed on I can't remember if I did the Detroit game very well. No, I had both the running backs in that game, and they didn't do what I wanted them to. So, but Cowboys nailed that one, and I nailed the Jets one yesterday. So definitely appreciate the subscribers. Get me to 200, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.